Welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We are your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio, and you can find us on our website, thewww.wine. Hello again, everybody. How are you, Kim?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Everything is great,
Good.
Kim. And once again, we have a very special guest. Peter Merriam is here. Peter, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you, Kim and Mark, for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. Peter is from merriamvineyards.com. And as our listeners know, we love a great wine story. And when the wine story has a local Massachusetts connection and you can buy these wines in the state of Massachusetts, it makes the story even better. So today, Peter is here. And Peter, can you please tell us your wine background, your history, and all about the winery, please?
Oh, sure. Well, I grew up in Maine, went to school in New Hampshire, and as they say, I have Massachusetts plates on my car now. I've started getting interested in wine in the late 70s. And my wife and I were fortunate enough to travel all the vineyards in France during our honeymoon in 1982. And those vines were just pushing in the springtime. And I wish we had some of those 82 grapes that were on the vine when we were out there. But we do have some 82s. But I had a package store, much like Franklin Liquors in Billerica, Massachusetts, for 17 years. And I kind of really started playing around with fine wines. And Billerica on the 128 Avenue, that most of the listeners will probably know, was becoming a high-tech area back in the 80s. So I had a Packie, and I sold Mouton Rothschild to Marlboro Cigs. And that's really when I got my first start. A really good friend of mine introduced me to a bottle of French Burgundy wine, Gevrey Chambertin, I believe, back in the late 70s. And that kind of kick-started me in the wine business. So I purchased that package store and ran it for 17 years. I had some friends that I grew up with in Maine that were hippies in a rock and roll band. They packed up their bags and, moved to California to seek their fame and fortune in the record industry and stuff. And that didn't go very well for them. So they all ended up working for various wineries out in Healdsburg, California, of all places. I would go out and visit them once a year, twice a year and stuff, and start looking around at different vineyard sites. But more particularly, I was looking for allocated wines that would come to the East Coast. And I could get those allocated wines to my Rolodex customers and pass along those great small producers from Sonoma County. So I kind of immersed a bunch of people in the industry, winemakers and winery owners and stuff like that, to get my start in 2000 when we finally bought our first vineyard.
I love this connection between having the package store here in Massachusetts and then putting the whole wine thing into the production end of it in California. We don't often talk to people who have that much of our regional connection to working here and living here and having grown up here, and then have that boots on the ground kind of experience out there in wine territory.
Yeah, and that kind of, allowed us to kind of look at all of the wine region out there in Napa and Sonoma and Lake County, not so much down in Central Coast and stuff, but it just reminded us so much of New England, that really rural context, just farming communities, really diverse agriculture. And that really kind of made us feel at home in Healdsburg. And we've, over the years, asked quite a few friends, and it's a really kind environment out there. If something breaks down on a tractor, or we need some extra labor or something, or an extra hand during bottling and stuff, can always call up a neighbor from, one of our small producers, and they're willing to help us out, and we can help them out as well. And that's basically how we found our first vineyard. It was called Meats Cellars. It's in the Healdsburg, but it's on Limerick Lane, which is kind of a recognizable area, one of the first areas ever planted in Sonoma County back in 1890. We kind of got in a couple of bidding situations before we landed on this one, Meats Cellars, which we now call Windacre by the Sea. Windacre is the name of a property property that we have in Maine, an old family property up there. So we purchased that vineyard in 2000. It was in a little bit of decline, and we knew that we had to retrofit the vineyard. In 2001, we actually started sustainably farming the vineyard site because since 1890, it had, I always say, it had everything thrown at it but napalm. So the soil was dead. Growing up in Maine, my dad was a farmer, a family plot. We had a root cellar growing up, and we were in the garden a lot. And we actually started composting tea, I can remember, with my dad back in the late 60s and early 70s. And so when I saw this vineyard and it was in such disrepair, we really started working on the sustainable side of it and building up that soil, which we've been doing now for 25 years. This is our 25th harvest season this year.
When you bought this winery, did you have farming experience with grapes, or were you just relying on what was there? Did you have winemaking experience? And if you could talk about sustainability.
Sure.
In Sonoma.
I really had no experience on the growing side of it and stuff, aside from I had been going out there since the 80s to Healdsburg, the mid 80s and such. But I kind of knew some of the vineyard managers and stuff like that. And we kind of knew what we were thinking of. But I have an expression. You know, when I was in the retail business, I knew how to take the cork out. And now I have to learn how to put the cork in. So I kind of learned as we went along. But my biggest concern was that sustainability of the vineyard site. The vineyard had phylloxera. So I kind of got some information from some of the vineyard managers and some other people that we worked with in the vineyards that how could we retard or slow down that process of phylloxera kind of choking off the vine from all of its nutrients and the uptake. We came up with hydrogen peroxide, which is a natural product. And we injected that into our irrigation system, which we call fertigation. So we cut down a lot on all of our spraying. Pesticides was cut out. Roundup was cut out and such like that. So we were able to wean along that vineyard for 11 years, and we took out block by block. And now, currently, I believe it's around 85 or 90% of Sonoma County vineyards are sustainable. They had a big push on that about 10 years ago. But we have gone a step further with Windacre Vineyard was our very first vineyard. We're flanked by some of these really old Vine Zen vineyards, and there was a lot of cross spray and contamination. And they've kind of loosened up a little bit. You used to have like a 50 or 75-foot buffer zone in between those vines or the vine rows. But now they were allowing us to apply for certification for which is called CCOF, Certified California Organic Farming. So we have started this year on our Windacre Vineyard to turn that over to CCOF. But our main property, where a winery facility is at Merriam Vineyards, and our production facility and the tasting room, that we had certified organic before we even planted our first vineyards on that site in 2009.
I have to tell you, you mentioned package store owner to go to a winery owner. It's something I have to yell at my dad about because in 1978, my dad buys a liquor store. And one of the things I always said to him is, why did you not buy French Burgundies or Bordeaux's and put them down instead of Jim Beam decanters, right? And then you go to the next level and you go from a package store owner to a winery. I just have to ask you, as far as trends in wine, what do you see different in California than Massachusetts? What's going on in the wine world out there that you say, wow, it's so different here than it is in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I think it may have filtered over this way and such, but natural wines, I believe. And there are some wineries that are playing around a little bit more now with non-alcoholic wines. We really stay true to how we've made the wine since 2000. I grew up here on the East Coast, and with the Packie and some of the Bordeaux and Burgundy wines that I was bringing in was kind of what I was weaned on, if you would. And I just wanted to follow that old traditional way and method of making wines. We rack our wines. We don't filter them until just very, very late in the process, just a sterile filter. We use 100% French oak barrels, either from Burgundy or Bordeaux in France. And I think that's one of the bigger things that I see over there. But we're staying true to the way that we've been making our wines for 25 years now at Merriam Vineyards.
Yeah, it is always interesting to kind of pay attention to what the trends are. And I feel like the non-alcoholic wine trend is a little bit slow getting off the ground as opposed to, say, mocktails or lower alcohol or no alcohol beers. I think it's just a little bit harder with wine just to get the integrity of the beverage to be something that is similar enough to actually actual wine to make the consumer want to switch over.
That's a very nice way to state it. You do have to work the wines a little bit to
Yeah. Yeah.
de-alcohol wines. So other trends, I think we were talking earlier off mic to get the younger Gen X and Gen Z interested in wines and such. So I think that could be the new entry level for natural wines and stuff like that. The younger consumer is very concerned about where they get their produce, where they get their goods, their wines, their beverages and stuff. So I think, well, I know that we've been really ahead of the curve with our sustainability and organic farming. When we started our second project, which is called Los Amigos on Los Amigos Road in Healdsburg, we hired a consultant for certified organic farming. His name was Amigo Bob, a really, really great guy. He's always out in the vineyard, with his sandals on and his, I guess we call him back here, clam picker pants, short
ones, yeah.
three-quarter pants. And
Hobbit pants, yep.
yeah. And, hair down to the middle of his back, chewing on a piece of grass and stuff. And he really helped us really elevate from that sustainable farming to 100% certified organic farming. And going back to when we first started surrounding ourselves with people with experience and stuff, our first winemaker and who helped us build out our facility was Margaret Davenport, who was the head winemaker and one of the first female winemakers in Sonoma County for Clos de Bois through consolidation, and she was getting toward retirement. So she helped us set up the winery production building and stayed on with us for about 4 years. And we had an assistant winemaker underneath Margaret that stayed with us for 7 years. It's all about getting the right people to help you out, going back to the experience, not having the experience and just knowing how to pull the cork out and not put it in.
Peter, one of the things Kim and I love to promote on the show a lot is the family wineries, the small wineries versus the big wineries. You promote your wines as handmade by your family. Can you explain to the listeners your feelings about what you're producing versus what most people are seeing on the shelves here for wine?
To start out with, what we've been talking about is our farming practices and stuff. And right now, we've gotten to the point where 98% of all of the wines that we produce are estate grown. We own the vineyards. We have our own management company that takes care of those vineyards and stuff. And we're not buying bulk wine for no matter what, we're doing. If it's our Russian River Valley tier that we have now, we do a big project with Davio's, who we kind of consider family. Davio's is a local restaurant chain throughout Massachusetts and several other states. We do all of their private label wine. We don't purchase any grape juice for any of those wines either. They're all estate grown. But as far as family, every one of our 4 children have worked at the winery. My middle son, Evan, who's doing a great, great job, is the estate manager out there now. He left BU, graduated from college, and went out for a harvest. And he ended up staying, and he's been there for 7 years now, and he runs the whole show out there. So
he went out and then you snagged him.
Yeah, exactly. Or Sonoma snagged him.
Yeah, well, okay.
In Healdsburg. Sure. But that's what really separates us is that 95% or 96, 98% of all of the wines that we produce, we handle it right from the ground, basically to your table. One of the only wines that we continue since 2009 is our Rockpile Cabernet that we buy from the Glockner Turner family up in Rockpile, an AVA that's used to be part of Dry Creek Valley. And I should go back and say that Merriam Vineyards, all of our vineyards, our Windacre Vineyard, the Los Amigos Vineyard that I was just talking about with Amigo Bob, and those 2 are in Healdsburg. It's still in the Russian River Valley. And our third vineyard is Eastside Estate Vineyard, which is actually in Forestville, but still in the Russian River Valley. Now we can talk about that with a Chardonnay.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Kim and Mark. Today we have special guest Peter Merriam from Merriam Vineyards, and you can find information about him and his wines at merriamvineyards.com. We are supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine, and our website is thewww.wine. And you can find information about Peter's wines at their Instagram at Merriam Vineyards. Welcome back to The Wonderful World of Wine. Mark and I are here today with Peter Merriam from Merriam Vineyards, and we are actually going to taste through a couple of his wines. So we have a Chardonnay and a Merlot that we are going to be tasting together, and we hope that this is informative to you, our listeners, because these wines are available here in the state of Massachusetts. Correct, Mark?
Correct. They were on my shelf right now.
All right. So Mark has them at the store.
We'll make
And
everybody
these are
jealous
just
and want to get these.
really lovely examples of a couple of California wines that are grape varieties that most people around here know and love, a Chardonnay and a Merlot. So why don't we start with the Chardonnay, everybody?
Yes, a 2023 Russian River Chardonnay, 14.2% alcohol, 100% Chardonnay, 11-month and 30% new French oak, and only 200 cases made, Peter.
Yes, we do very small lots of each one of these wines. This is the Russian River Valley tier. We actually have three different tiers. We have our Russian River Valley, which is basically for your consumers, Mark, through the wholesale market. We have a second tier, which we call our estate wine. So it would be like Windacre Vineyard, our Eastside Estate Vineyard. We actually have some of our vineyard sites named after some family members. We have Diana's Pinot Noir, Danielle's Sauvignon Blanc or Fumé Blanc. We have a Sned Red for all of the kids, Stephen, Nicholas, Evan, and Danielle. But this Chardonnay comes from our newest vineyard, which is called the Eastside Estate in Forestville. Our facility is near the town of Healdsburg, but this Eastside Vineyard we're really excited about because it's 8 or 9 miles closer to the coast. So it's a much, much cooler climate, and we get a really nice, crisp, acidic style Chardonnay compared to what we would get over in the eastern side of the Russian River Valley, where our Bordeaux vineyard is in Windacre. Yeah, it's just really clean, crisp, bright, nice mouthfeel. We kind of make this wine to accommodate the people that may like a little bit more of a steely, dry stainless steel style Chardonnay without over oaking it. So we only use about 3 out of 10 barrels of brand new French oak barrels. And we also go light on the malolactic fermentation. And that malolactic fermentation really gives you that buttery, viscous mouthfeel. So we've kind of toned that down a little bit so that it can really accommodate a wide range of Chardonnay drinkers.
I'm really glad that you brought up that sort of acidic kind of note to this wine, because that was the first thing that I thought to mention, was that it's got this really bright, it's not that big buttery, it's got this really refreshing kind of characteristic to it, which is what I generally look for my white wines, regardless of what the grape variety is that they're made out of. So I think that this is a style that is very appealing to a lot of wine drinkers.
Yeah, it's a very clean Chardonnay.
Yeah. It's nice.
For being in French oak.
Yeah, it's like you smell it and you're like, oh, wow, this is definitely Chardonnay. But, you know, it also comes across as kind of this nice, bright, refreshing character.
Having sold Chardonnay for years in retail, Peter, what have you decided is like the style now? Because Chardonnay's all over. It's unoaked. There was the heavy oak phase, and there's this fake oak phase. I think this is the style that you're making right here that is what is needed in the Chardonnay world. It's not that overpoweringly oak bomb. It's just a beautiful, clean Chardonnay.
Right. And that's totally by design. We do make other Chardonnays. Some have a little bit more oak, a little bit more buttery taste. But I think all in all, we kind of lean toward the European style in all of our wines. If I could make a French Burgundy wine just like they do over there in Burgundy, I would be all over it. And that's what we try to do. We try to pick it so it's a little bit underripe. We don't want it to get too overly ripe. It increases the alcohol, and we don't want to do that. But we want a little bit of that really fresh crispness to that wine. And the same thing with our Sauvignon Blanc. We actually picked that a little bit underripe. The vineyard's kind of situated along a river creek, and so it has its boundaries. So the orientation of the vineyard, it gets a little bit more morning sun than it does in the afternoon. And what we'll actually do in different blocks, we'll go through and we'll pick the sunny side of the vineyard first. Then 2 or 3 days later, when it starts to catch up a little bit on the shady side, we'll go in and pick that vineyard too. We just don't cross-section the whole thing and say, we'll see what we come out with at the end. And we do that to every single vineyard that we have. We have several different blocks, and each block is treated separately. So this Chardonnay is made from 2 specific blocks, 6A and 6B, and the clones are Robert Young and Spring Mountain. Robert Young and Spring Mountain clones. And these vines were planted around 2018. So the East Side Estate Vineyard was owned by another person, and we purchased it in 2022. So this 23 Chardonnay is our second Chardonnay produced from our estate.
It's amazing when you talk winemaking with someone, they can tell you the actual spot the grape is coming from. It's so rare nowadays to be able to get that information from somebody. I can't tell you how many times I'm sure you've experienced it being in retail when someone brings you a wine and they can tell you absolutely nothing about the wine. And Kim and I are always big on, like we said earlier, the story. To be able to say that this comes from a certain spot is just, I think, so special in the wine world and so lost now in the wine world.
Yes, yeah. And, we have, like I say, we have several different blocks. We have one really small, unique block of Old Wente clone that's, I think, 0.23 of an acre that's hillside. And that's a very special block. But our winemaker just really loves doing this because he can play with each different block, and we keep each lot separate, and then we'll blend it in at the end, for taste and such like that. And then even after 2 years, our winemaker and our team, Evan, our manager, and I really can focus in on each one of those subplots in each vineyard. And like our Windacre, our Bordeaux vineyard, has gravelly sections and it has loomy sections and sandy sections, and we farm different Bordeaux varietals in each one of those different sections on the vineyard site. Once again, we might have 3 different lots of Cabernet. We'll pick them all separately, and then we'll blend them in by taste afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Nicely balanced Chardonnay. Warm climate, California, but still you're getting that nice kind of racy acidity, and you can taste that minerality, and you still get that, I think, lightness to it that is something that's very appealing to the modern wine drinker.
Yes,
I just want to keep on sipping on it because it's so yummy.
It makes you want to have another glass.
I know, absolutely.
Your rarity too, Peter, is that you have the Russian River Valley on the wine. Nowadays, people picking up Chardonnays off the shelf. They're California, and some of the juice is sourced from who knows where when it says California. Right. So this is something the listeners should be seeking out, the varietal from a region that it's made for this wine.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, we wouldn't be able to grow our Merlot and Cabernet, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot that close to the coast. It gets so much maritime influence. And on this vineyard site, we have, I mentioned that we have different lots, different sections of the vineyard. We're going to actually, we have started to get certain blocks on this vineyard site certified organic as well. We also fish-friendly farming. I'm a big fisherman, and we're up against Mark West Creek that flows into the Russian River. And we are now responsible for taking care of that creek frontage for any blowdowns. Last year, we planted about 450 willow trees in there for a section that had been kind of flooded out and the bank of the river had been damaged. So we rebuilt that section of the creek. And also, we're really responsible about what we put in that vineyard. We have family out there walking around. Our winemakers and such are out there with their dogs and pets, and any pesticides that we can reduce in any of these vineyard sites is just good for everybody. We also have on vineyard sites, we have owl boxes, hawk perches, bluebird boxes. We have like big borders of flowers and grasses and stuff to attract really good flying insects as well as beehives on our properties. So
you said the magic word for me.
What's that?
Beehives.
Beehives. The honey is so good. It's incredible.
I bet.
I mean, it's as dark as a stout.
So Sonoma has like 400 wineries. You have a tasting room, correct, Peter?
Correct, yes.
Listeners go out to Sonoma. They can go to your tasting. They need appointments to go to the tasting room, or can they just show up?
No, we prefer, particularly if we're going to do an elevated tasting for our customers with a charcuterie board, a wine tasting, and a tour of the vineyards and our organic practices and stuff like that. We are open 7 days a week. We're just south of the town of Healdsburg. And Healdsburg, by the way, is 1 hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge, right straight up Highway 101.
This is like, me waxing poetically about bees and sustainability. And that was kind of the point that I wanted to make, was this integrated, sustainable way of keeping a vineyard that seems to be a lot of the direction that a lot of wineries are going. It's not just, are you preserving your waterways and things like that, but it's this whole way of looking at managing your vineyard where it comes to all of the, not just using fewer pesticides and fewer herbicides and things like that, but integrating other aspects of this focus on the environment and using the, not just like the beehives, but also like introducing or at least encouraging the native critters that are in your vineyard to live there and be a part of the environment.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and we're now I think the term that's being used is regenerative farming, where we have goats in the vineyard and stuff rather than using a tractor all the time and burning the diesel and compacting the soil, cover crops. We were actually one of the very first wineries, one of 6 when I built it out in '09, where we put in a constructed wetlands. And at first the county is like, what is that? And why do you need it? And why? And we're like, well, we would like to reuse all of our winery wastewater. So we'd like to retain that through a digestive area with aquatic plant life to filter the water out. And then it goes into a 70,000 gallon pond. And we use that water for supplementing our irrigation and landscaping. They kind of scratched their head about it. And they said, well, yeah, go ahead. If you want to use that land to do that, it's really, really helped us considerably for part of our regenerative practices.
And you see many other parts of the world that are using that same sort of system to be more of an enclosed, reusing their resources and making sure that they're not that much of strain on the environment for their wine growing activities. So it sounds like you're ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Peter, let's talk a little bit more about sustainability. Do you think the average wine consumer is looking for that, or is this a typical wine geek thing that they're looking for? What are you seeing feedback are you getting on that? Are people giving you positive feedback on that to support the wines, or do they have to be educated about it?
I think a little bit of it is education and stuff.
Like I have a section in my store. I mean, you probably didn't have it years ago, but I have an organic, sustainable, and people like look at it like it's foreign.
Yeah.
And very few people seem to understand what those sections mean.
I know. I see it and I'm in a lot of liquor stores and wine shops and such like that. And I think that just having it on the label is good enough. I think that the consumer out there is educated enough or wants to be educated enough so that they're going to turn the bottle over or see on the label that it's made with organic grapes. That is the avenue that we're going down. Our winery facility is certified organic, so we could make an organic wine, but we elect to just promote the fact that these wines are made from organic grapes. Particularly our red wines, we want those to last for decades, and they do. So aside from that, the only thing that we do, we really take a minimalist approach to making our wines. We start it all in the vineyard, and the more work you can do in the vineyard before you bring that fruit in, weather conditions aside, it makes it so much easier to make that wine for our winemaker and such. So taking care out in the vineyard is our job number one. So I think just made with organic grapes is good enough for me, and it's going to last a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that the quality of the wine in the glass really is quite something. Like I've moved on to your Merlot, which is our second wine to taste in your lineup.
Great.
And it's absolutely lovely. Like it's this really nice balance between the textural elements like the acidity, but also there's some really beautiful fruit in here as well.
Yeah, so Kim moved on to the 2022 Russian River Merlot, 100% Merlot, 14.5% alcohol, 18 months, 30% new French oak. And again, only 100 cases made of the Russian River Merlot and $30
tiny
price.
production. Yeah.
Very,
How much for? I'm
very
sorry,
small.
I cut you off, Mark. How much
No,
for the
$30
bottle?
price on
Yeah.
the Merlot.
Yeah.
And like Kim said, just it's a really nice aroma. And I have this thing, I always go on my Merlot kick that I just so
Good for you.
disappointed that
What's the
people-
Merlot kick, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, people just don't explore Merlot. It's like everybody's Cab, Pinot. There's so many beautiful Merlots out there, and this is a great example, Peter, of if a Cab
agree.
lover doesn't love this Merlot. Something's wrong
Yeah.
with them.
Well, that's what we touted as a cab drinker's Merlot. Everybody knows the movie Sideways.
Sideways.
So I have a little bit of a story. We bought our first vineyard, which was planted to 12 acres of Merlot in 2000, 18 months and 35% French oak. Then we bottled it up and we put it in reserve for a year and a half or a year or so. And then we had like 2,500 cases of Merlot ready to go on the tractor trailer truck to the warehouse, and the movie Sideways came out. And we're like, oh my God. But I am happy to say that the wine that we're tasting right now, Mark and Kim from Merriam Vineyards, Merlot, is our 22nd harvest, actually our 23rd harvest of Merlot. So we never gave up on Merlot. Our Windacre Vineyard, when we replanted and retrofit the whole vineyard to make it a true, what I call a Bordeaux vineyard with Cabernet, Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec, we made sure that we replanted the Merlot in one of the very best absolute lots or sections of that vineyard that we could. And it's at the very top with really nice gravelly Bordeaux-ish style rocks. And so we get a really small berry with nice concentrated fruit, not overabundant because the vine is stressed out so much. And then we have another lot down below, lot number 10, that's a little bit more peaty, loomy soil. So we get a little bit plumper berry. We get a little bit more juice to skin ratio. And so once again, these are two different sections. They're picked separately. They're coopered separately for 18 months in French oak barrels, and then we blend by taste. One of the reasons that we have such limited amounts of Merlot is that we have our second label that I talked about a little bit earlier, which is our estate Merlot that we sell primarily at the winery. And that sells so well because everybody's on the bandwagon about Merlot. That's where it started. And whatever is left over is what I get in wholesale on our Russian River Valley tier. So it's one of our best-selling wines and one of our most award-winning wines as well.
If I was to try to explain to someone balance in a wine, I would use this. It's
Yeah.
like it's the example of balance in a wine.
I mean, the nose is almost like a toasted marshmallow. So you've got like the sweet kind of toasty oak notes on the nose, and then you taste it and it has this really beautiful core of acidity, which I always look for, but surrounded by this really nice berry note that really just says to you, beautiful red wine fruit, good structure, just a really nice kind of balance of all of those things that I look for in a good ripe red wine.
Mm-hmm. And since day one, we've been making this Merlot and all of our Bordeaux style wines in the same fashion, because I believe and truly believe that wine should go with food.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see me drinking a lot of wine without food, but that's why I've always had the philosophy of really nice, bright acid and very good tannin structure, and so that it's all integrated. And that's why we really minimize the oak. We use the best French oak barrels that you can possibly buy. I like the oak integrated into the wine rather than being in your nose or in your face, or the wine has to be laid down for 10 years before you can even, appreciate that really nice subtle acidity and tannin structure to the wine.
Yeah. It's interesting because I can notice the oak a whole lot more on the nose, but then I taste it and the integration is really, really good. And I remember thinking the first sip I took of this wine, like, what am I going to drink this with? Like, it immediately struck me as this is a food wine, which you don't always get for California wines. And I've been taking a lot of notes lately about like whatever I'm drinking and what is the food pairing that it's going to go with. And this is definitely a California wine that is something that I would happily pair with a meal, which you can't always say for a lot of wines from California. What am I going to have this with? Ooh, like I really am thinking of a pairing now. What's this going to be good with?
Well, my wife is Greek, so I can tell you for sure that it goes excellent with lamb.
All right, next Easter then. I know what I'm going to have a bottle of with my Easter lamb.
One of the key components is that we really took a bold step early on, or the person that I bought the vineyard from, when he planted Merlot was really, really hot. Not climatically, but sales-wise. But just the opposite. We're growing these Bordeaux varietals in a very cool climate on the eastern side of the Russian River Valley. And so we get those long days of hot sun and cool nights and foggy mornings and stuff like that. And we get a lot of hang time for our Bordeaux varietals. Our Cabernet Franc is one of the very last, and the Petit Verdot, the very last ones to come in. We're
Sure.
actually pretty much done in the winery before we bring those wines in. So we get a lot of hang time, and that gets all of the phenolics in line. And once again, it makes it much easier for the winemaker when everything's in line there, not high sugars and low acidity or vice versa and such like that. So
Can I ask a really geeky question?
if
So
I can answer it.
when do you harvest your Cab Franc?
Oh, Cabernet Franc, it really depends. Somewhere around Halloween, I would say.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Yeah.
really later in the season. I've always had a love-hate relationship with Cabernet Franc.
Ah,
And I appreciate that answer because I do find that the ones that are earlier picked have that like really funky green pencil lead kind of thing. And I never like it when they're picked on the greener side, but with that bit of riper,
yeah.
that hang time that you were talking about definitely, I think, makes it a great variety that can be much more appealing to a lot of different people.
Yeah, and Cabernet Franc actually was the very first varietal that I planted, replanted on that vineyard site because I wanted our Merlot to be really Pomerol and Saint-Emilion style. And so that Cabernet Franc was a beautiful blend into that. And so we planted a Cabernet Franc in '03, but we had purchased some Cabernet Franc to do that blending earlier on. And after one of our first blendings, we had some extra Cabernet Franc and we just bottled it up as shiners and stuff and stuck it aside. And a year or two later, I'm like, where's that Cab Franc that we bottled? And
You
so
lost the Cab Franc.
yeah. And so we opened up a bottle of it, and I'm like, holy cow, from this point on, we're going to do Cabernet Franc on its own. But the key to Cabernet Franc is it's very vigorous. And so you have to go in early and green drop.
Ah, okay.
And what green dropping is you literally drop that green fruit to open up the fruit zone underneath the leaves so that you get really good airflow and sunlight through those remaining clusters of grapes. If you overcrop it, it will never get ripe. And then the second pass that we make is when it starts to go through veraison, where the grapes start to turn from green to purple. And if we see some of the clusters that are way behind, like at 50%, and then you've got another cluster next to it that 75 to 80% will drop that cluster that's only halfway there. So we drop a lot of Cabernet Franc to make sure that we really get rid of that really herbaceousness to the wines.
Cool.
And we'll do that with any of our Bordeaux wines. We don't like stacking. We like a really clean fruit zone underneath the canopy.
Well, thank you for indulging in my nerdy wine question.
So, Peter, your wines are available in Mass. What other states can our listeners find your wines in? Obviously, California, Mass.
Well, you can see that we make very little of each one of these wines. And so mostly our focus is here in New England. So I can get home at night. So whenever I'm on the road and stuff. So all of the New England states, except for Connecticut at this point in time. And we do a little bit in the States where we kind of piggyback off some of Davio's locations.
You mentioned the Davios. Our listeners go to Davio's. What on the wine list will they see? They know that's yours. Is it the Davios?
Yep.
It has your name?
It has my name on the wine list, but the label is the Davio's brand. Their branding. It's a totally different label and stuff. And the owner, Steve DiFilippo, and my name is on the back of the wine as well. So it's been a great
Is it the house pour? Or?
It is. It's their number one selling house wine in
cool.
all locations.
Nice. So our listeners have to look for that too. So appreciate
So look for the Davio's Reserve on the label, everybody, when you go into Davio's.
It does say Davio's Reserve. Have you seen it, Kim?
I have. We go there with so the Davio's in Foxborough. It was only about 15 minutes from home for us.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
It's very close by. Yes, very nice.
Yep. So you're familiar with the wine?
I am. Yep.
Nice.
Very nice.
Peter,
good food, good bar program, good wines.
Yeah.
Yes. Getting good food.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's been a pleasure talking with you and tasting the wines. I hope our listeners will reach out and explore these wines. Of course, they are on the shelves here in Massachusetts, or you can get them on merriamvineyards.com. Thank you very much, Peter. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you.
Oh, it's been a great time. We thank you both very much, Kim and Mark.
Thank you for listening to The Wonderful World of Wine. We've been your hosts, Mark Lenzi and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. Today, our special guest has been Peter Merriam from merriamvineyards.com. If you want more information about ourselves, you can go to our website, thewww.wine. Our program is supported by Franklin Public Radio. You can find us on all social media, The Wonderful World of Wine. Cheers.
Cheers.